I want to know if the AI will say if I am sexy enough. Because I'm not sure if I am or I am not. But AI says, quote, I'm not sure what you're asking, unquote.
Hello, and welcome to the Everyday Podcast, where we talk about our relationship with technology and the role it plays in our day to day lives. From artificial intelligence to online dating and ride sharing apps, this podcast invites past residents of our annual residency, The Digital Everyday, to look at our tech touchpoints through a feminist lens. My name is Afrah, and I'll be your host for this episode. This week, we have Gurpreet Kaur, who was a resident of the Digital Everyday in 2023, to talk about their experience of co-creating the lexicon. Gurpreet Kaur is a researcher, writer, and a learner with art. She likes to do research in the feminist process way, write with a slow, poetic love, and read like the trees and mountains are reading with her. She has worked closely with feminist methodologies within communities in different settings and holds interest in feminist pedagogies and politics and of writing through affect, narratives on body and queerness. What is a lexicon? Towards the end of the Digital Everyday, participants in each cohort co-create an output that represents the key thoughts, learnings, and insights they have taken away from their experience with the modules. This can take any form the members of the cohort choose. Poems, essays, video games, and illustrations are just few of the many. So, based on that, could you tell me a little bit about the prompt that you received and how you reacted to that, what that process was like?
I think the prompt was largely bringing learnings together, bringing a synthesis of what one has been learning about, what one has been talking about in the cohorts, and the kind of conversations that have been happening, right? So it opened that landscape for us. It wasn't restrictive that, okay, we have to write an essay and I think these were things that I was already kind of dabbling with. I was struggling with the anxiety of algorithm and what it makes you do and the kind of struggles around it. And in general, I think the larger performance of being this productive subject. So I think those were the anxieties that I was really playing with at that point when this came out. So yeah, and then when I shared with the group, when we sat together and we were just sharing our drafts that this is what we were thinking about doing, etc. Everybody got really excited, and then I got really pumped up to okay, then this makes sense. So yeah, I think it was really collectively sharing that space to learn from each other also as a process that was interesting for us. Yeah.
That's incredible to hear. On that note, would you also like to recite the poem for everyone listening in?
AI on the screen. Who's the sexiest of them all? Showing you hot and sexy results. Bracket shows videos of sexy white dancers. Bracket clips. But who's the sexiest yes of them all? I want to know if the AI will say if I am sexy enough. Because I'm not sure if I am or I am not. But AI says, quote, I'm not sure what you're asking, unquote. Quote, I do not have a response to this in my directory, unquote. I want to know, I want to see, I want to hear. Why can't the AI tell me what I want to hear? Why do I still feel like a lack? Just like the lack that has always been felt growing up. Just like the shame that was ingrained as I took shape and body of a woman. Just like the absence I felt when the thin, fair girls in school would have boyfriends and no one would look at a fat, dark girl like myself. Do the norms and nomenclature persist even very much within the world of AI? So is AI another mirror of the lack, shame, absence? A paranoia creeps in. Who's the master here? Who's the slave here? But I need to prove that I am not a robot. Yes, I am not a robot. But I think I am a race with a robot. Paranoia. A subject with a paranoid subjectivity. I feel anxious all the time of losing the race. I've already lost the race for sure. I'm not able to sleep. I'm not able to perform, produce, project intelligence and intelligible humanness. Again, who's the master here? Who's the slave? Well, it's not a simple linear story, is what I have learned. A gamble is behind the AI power game, and there is huge competition. There are also black holes and also loopholes. Black holes through which omissions and segregations happen, loopholes through which resistance happens.
Thank you. So I just wanted to get into some of the lines. I think to begin with, um, you said, I want to know if the AI will say if I am sexy enough. And I think a lot of that also comes back to, what you said about the phygital world and you're learning from, that module. Where you were saying like, pleasure is so blurred and like we don't think of it as a binary anymore. So what was the thought process behind like this one sentence? Because I feel like it kind of sums up everything. So I'm just wondering if there was a specific instance or experience or anything that drove that.
Yeah. I think while I was writing about this, I was also obsessing over reels that had those get ready with me and my makeup stuff and of course it was also the algorithm thing because I think I had looked up a few of them and then it just kind of started showing me all of them. Just looking at makeup videos also helps me distract, of course, but it also sometimes eases out anxiety sometimes. So I think it was somewhere around that time that it was happening. And I think when I kind of reflect back on this, it was also um, the deep need of validation that one is seeking here, right? Like, and to connect it with what one has grown up with, the constant need for being that good enough and being that pretty enough uh, or sought out enough person, right? And so I think what I'm trying to also uh, do here or make a contrast here by bringing the AI was that it kind of breaks that binary down, right? It's also coming from that space of structure which constantly tells you or puts you down as a woman occupying a certain body or a certain color. So, so I guess I was playing around with that when I brought in the AI and brought in the need for my validation in juxtaposition with seeking it from AI. So yeah, I guess.
Yeah. And I think for me also, like when I was reading this, I think what also stood out in addition to what you're saying is just the fact that, these beauty standards, we think it's a completely physical thing and then it makes its way into the digital realm and then it kind of pushes back into the physical. So I think that loop is where the digital exists. Because you can't separate the two anymore. The knowledge transfer, everything transfers, and there's no black or white, which is also like what brings me to my next thing. Because there's also a line that says, who is the master here? Who is the slave here? But I need to prove that I am not a robot. So when you speak of master and slave, what are the ideas that are running through your head?
When you kind of try and understand theories around capitalism, theories around the employer and the employee, and those kind of binaries that get taken up when you are in the formal, hyphenated, informal, productive workspace. I think I was growing from there because, again, it goes back to the history of capitalism. I wanted to bring that in to think about labor, to think about what kind of subjects or subject positions we occupy, and place it here. And also put it together with the question that you were constantly asked, to prove that you're not a robot, right? So I feel that I think what I was also trying to do here was to put them together, to think about these positions that one is made to put in when we're dialoguing or when we're conversing with a digital medium or with a digital space, and how much of a larger structure plays around it and plays behind it, as opposed to what we just see on the screen. So I think that was what I was thinking about when I was really writing.
And there's also a line that says, I feel anxious all the time of losing the race. I have already lost the race for sure. What about that? Where did that come from? What are we speaking of when we say a race?
Yeah, I think again it's again coming from the idea of the race of, or the performance to be productive all the time, which is again a very capitalist neoliberalist idea, right? You're constantly running to put up something, to play some role in the larger game of things, right? And I think clearly, I mean, I think I still kind of feel anxious about it, but at that time I was definitely very anxious. And this was something that came within the cohort discussions also, actually, when we were talking about how the digital every day is giving us it's unpacking the digital, the language of the digital, but how being on that platform can be very anxiety provoking. Like on Discord, it had become so much information was being bombarded. After a point, it really became very difficult to hold on to that practice as something that the group could own up to. And these were things, the Discord communications, or what was kind of really turning up. So I think it became part of our discussions as well, that it is frustrating, it is difficult, it's very challenging to practice something like a shared piece of labor. I feel I was kind of coming from there because principally and ideally, I want to imagine a world like that where I do not want to live under the pressure of performing a certain subjectivity all the time. But I guess we're still part of that system.
Yeah, this idea of the race is like, I feel like it applies to every aspect of life almost, because I feel like it definitely has its roots in capitalism, but these sort of expectations make their way even into spaces like this. Just because of how all encompassing this idea of racing is, like just having to have a finish line all the time and not being just there for the journey. I think that's also quite interesting, where you say black holes through which emissions and segregations happen, loopholes through which resistance happens. And I just love that line so much, because just this idea of having to like live on the margins and then build resistance on the margins is just something that's come up so much over the course of the entire course. I feel like that's been like popping up a lot. So when you speak of resistance, are there specific ways in your life that you employ some sort of digital resistance? Especially since you mentioned after the course, you're thinking a lot about paranoid subjectivity and how you can not be a paranoid subject all the time. So, like, I'm just wondering, are there ways in which you figured out to navigate that? I know it's very difficult given how strong these structures are, but yeah, just wondering if you've given that thought and like.
Yeah, I think it's a process that is kind of ongoing, and a learning that's ongoing. But I guess I've become more aware of how much time and space am I kind of giving to, for instance, a social media platform, and how am I kind of using it through my own choice and agency to be able to observe and write things, or document things. So I think it has definitely created more awareness of the digital engagement, of how you are kind of engaging with a digital space and what kind of possibilities it can offer you. So I think that shift definitely is happening. So earlier maybe I would not pay so much attention, but now it immediately piques my interest. It something that I would like to kind of write about or think about, and also kind of create those connections with other people who are engaging with digital platforms to archive, document, or create stories.
Yes. I think Jack in one of the modules mentioned about little flowers growing through the cracks and how that is the equivalent of resistance in digital spaces. And it was the first thing that came to mind when I read this, because I don't know, instantly I was like, oh my God. Yeah.
Jack was like, I mean, I think they were the star for me. Yeah.
I love that. And also, like, at least with my experience with the digital everyday, I think that was one of the first times that I had like started diving into topics, digital topics beyond just everyday media interactions. So I think like viewing that with a feminist lens, I think seeing social media with a feminist lens has become kind of picked up in the mainstream, but then looking at things like algorithms and like underlying technological structures, like that was such a new experience for me. And and to learn that in like a group of people who also may have been learning that for the first time was just like I don't know, it was so invigorating. But yeah, like did you feel like there were certain topics that you felt like, oh my God, this is so new to me? Like did that ever happen for you, or like was it more like, oh, I know this, but in depth?
I think I think each of these modules that we were doing, they kind of were layering the experiences that one was coming with, right? So it's not something that what Nupur was talking about, platform economy, Uber, cab drivers, etc., and the kind of injustice that happens at a very invisible level. But I think the whole idea of paranoid subjectivity, that was something that kind of really added a very interesting layer to what was out there. So that gig workers and platform economy is working, or what you're also mentioning, algorithm, right? So and when we did that whole Facebook exercise in Nayantara's module, I thought that was really eye opening, and on how much of you are being tapped as people, as subject. Also, I think what was very exciting and interesting for me was the whole idea of digital resistances, and I think that module really kind of opened up that you are not like dormant, passive subjects at the end of the day. There are a lot of possibilities that are opened up that can be explored. To exercise agency. So I think there were a lot of nuances that really got opened up in each of the modules, I would say.
That's really interesting. Thanks for sharing, because I feel like everything that you just mentioned actually goes back to your lexicon, because I feel like every theme you spoke about, it does appear in your lexicon. And I think that's so interesting that you were able to pull together like every learning, like every super interesting learning you had, and like put it in one kind of form.
And yeah, that being said, I feel like this is the perfect moment for us to wrap up this conversation. I wish we could have spoken for longer, because I think there's so much for us to get into, just even with your lexicon and the kind of learnings that you've had so far. But thank you so much for being here, Gurpreet. It's been an amazing chat, and I hope that the listeners find this as insightful as I did.